Hey everyone, as you guys know, I don't usually do this very often, so this will be different for me. Um, sorry. I want to take a moment to talk about ADHD and what it really is, at least for me. According to medical dictionaries and even the regular dictionary, ADHD stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, which basically means people get naturally hyper. And that does include me. As sometimes I do get naturally hyper out of nowhere. When I was younger, too much sugar or red dye or something like that would trigger the ADHD, the hyperactive half, and you know, more or less I'd be bouncing off the walls, according to my family. I don't remember a lot from my childhood about that, but then again, I've gotten older and I've probably suppressed those memories somewhere. They'll probably come back eventually, which would be really weird. But what people don't realize about ADHD is that a lot of people that suffer from ADHD are actually very intelligent people. They tend to gravitate towards certain tasks or uh, certain things that they excel at. I've done quite a bit over the years. I used to play the keyboard. I was pretty good at that. Um, I'm pretty good at cooking. At least that's what people tell me when I cook. Other people have tried my cooking and they seem to really enjoy it, and they tell me I should open a restaurant. But for me, ADHD, it does cause insomnia for me because unfortunately, having a chemical imbalance in your mind is really difficult sometimes. My mind runs roughly about 100 miles or so a minute, not even an hour, a minute. So a lot of times when I'm in a conversation with somebody, in my head, I'm 50 steps ahead of the conversation, and I have to try to backtrack to where the conversation actually is. And sometimes that's really difficult to do. Even for me in school, because of my ADHD, I had a hard time focusing on things. There were certain things that I gravitated towards, like culinary, cooking. I gravitated towards that. And, in high school, I took some cooking classes, or as they called it, food production. I did all three of them: food production one, two, and three in a single year, school year, which was fun. I enjoyed being in those classes. Um, Avery, go. Sorry, y'all. I'll talk to my cat. She's a bug. I love her to death, but she really is a bug. I say that's another thing about ADHD is that you have a hard time staying focused on one single thing. In your head, it's easier to do 50,000 things all at once rather than trying to focus on one single task. And that's become difficult over the years sometimes without the use of medications here or there. I used to be on medication for it. I went off the medication many, many years ago. The first time I went off it was my senior year of high school. And then I tried going back on the medication many years later. It didn't work for me. After taking it for about a week, I couldn't do it. Um, but ADHD is also hyper focusing. So you may get into doing something that you're hyper focused on doing. Like it could be a small little task. It could be, say cleaning or, you know, doing music or whatever. But your mind gets hyper focused on that. And if you interrupt a person that's focused, hyper focused on what they're doing, it tends to take a while for them to get back on task, especially me. Like I said, I don't speak for everybody that has ADHD. I'm only speaking for myself. And one of my biggest problems with my ADHD, as I said, is that my mind is constantly going. That's why I have insomnia and why I don't get really good sleep, because my mind doesn't turn off like a normal person. Even in my sleep, my mind is running and running and running and running and running. One of the best analogies I can give, honestly, about how my brain is with my ADHD, it's sort of like your phone, like your internet. I have 50,000 tabs open, and there's some weird music coming from somewhere, and it's all grouping together. They're all different songs, but they're bits and pieces of different songs that are all just merging together to create one really weird song inside my head. And that really sucks sometimes. I can barely keep a full song in my head for very long until other bits and pieces of different songs mix it in. So imagine Inagata DeVito, Enter Sandman, some Disturbed in there, you know. It just all meshes together. And it's really weird and very crazy sometimes for me. There are things, as I said, I'm really good at. I'm pretty good at cooking and baking. I'm good with using my hands to build things. But, also a person like me, I get very easily frustrated at times. And it's nobody's fault. It's not even so much my own fault. It's just the way that my brain is wired. So if I'm doing something and it gets really hard at some point to do, I get really frustrated with it. And I sometimes take that out on other people, and I'm sorry for to those who I have taken out on over the years. I truly apologize from the bottom of my heart. I don't mean to be that way. I've never meant to be that way. It just seems to happen sometimes. Um, like I said, I sometimes have a hard time formulating a full sentence in my head because of it. I didn't even know what I was actually going to talk about other than ADHD, exactly how I was going to explain it when I got on live here. Um, I just, for me, one of the biggest things for me that helps to relax me, like a lot of people, is music. But my choices in music are all over the place. If it sounds good to me, I'll listen to it. Now, with that being said, crap, I forgot what I was going to say. Hold on. With that being said, though, like for instance, I can lay down and turn on Pink Floyd on YouTube and fall asleep listening to Pink Floyd. I can fall asleep listening to Metallica. I can fall asleep listening to Disturbed. The music doesn't bother me. It actually soothes me, no matter what style music it is. It seems to just soothe me. And one sec here. I gotta open my water real quick. My mouth's a little dry. So, you know, I can't stay. I have a hard time staying still for long periods of time. Every once in a while I can. It just depends on the situation and what I'm doing. If I'm laying down watching a movie that I'm really interested in, then yeah, I can stay still. But like a lot of people who fidget a lot, as you can see in my video here, I do tend to fidget quite a bit here and there. Um, but ADHD, yes, it's hard to deal. It's hard to deal with, hard to live with, as I'm sure a lot of you, other people that may suffer from ADHD already know. And even just ADD itself. ADD stands for attention deficit disorder, which means that the person basically has a hard time concentrating. But when you toss in the H, the hyperactive portion of it, means that, well, yes, the person has a hard time concentrating sometimes, or staying still, or formulating a sentence. It also means that they get naturally hyper outbursts out of nowhere sometimes, more so than your normal person does. And I've dealt with that a lot over the years. Sometimes certain things will trigger it. You know, too many energy drinks, which I stopped doing finally. I finally stopped drinking them. I realized that they were making me very sick at one point. Not more than a few months ago, I was getting sick because I was drinking energy drinks again. And so I decided to stop. I haven't had an energy drink in at least a couple of months now. And I feel great from it. Um, you know, for me, the ADHD is there, the ADD is there. I have adult ADD, which isn't too much different from, being a child with ADD. It's just as an adult, you have the potential to gain a little bit more control over it here and there. Not always. I've learned to live with my ADD and my ADHD without the use of medications. I've learned certain things that'll trigger it. I've learned certain ways here and there for myself to get refocused. Sometimes if a task is too hard for me at some point, I will actually stop and do something else for a little while. And once I accomplish that task, even if it's something simple like just turning on the TV and watching a little TV to relax my mind, it helps. Back in school and even beyond that, when I've had to study for things, I've always listened to music. It helps to soothe my mind, it helps me to focus. I don't know why, but it does. And I don't argue with it, I don't ask questions about my mind. Sometimes, though, honestly, I don't even want to be in my own mind because it drives me crazy with how far ahead my mind always is and how fast my mind is functioning at times, anywhere between 50 to well over 100 miles per minute. It does get difficult. And, even Callie, she has ADHD, and she's the same way sometimes. It's hard for her to stay focused. Like, even at times, we'll be watching a movie and we're on our phones at the same time. We're basically listening to the movie, not so much actually watching it, as we're doing whatever on our phone, on Facebook, on this or on that. I have a tendency to play my games here and there while we're watching a movie. I can't help that. It helps my mind. But then at some point, I'll put the phone down and I'll start actually watching the movie. And even if I wasn't into it at first, a lot of times I'll get into it afterwards. It just seems to work that way for me. Um, and again, I don't speak for every person that has ADHD. I speak for myself. And personally, for myself, as I've said, it's difficult sometimes with everything. My lack of concentration, my hyper outbursts here and there. It also causes me not to have too much of a filter at times. So a lot of times my language gets a little more than it should. I have a tendency to swear a lot at times, and I don't really mean to. It's just one of those things that happens sometimes. Um, but if anybody out there is suffering from ADD or ADHD, and you feel like you need someone to talk to, by all means, message me. I'll talk to you. I'll discuss whatever you need to or want to discuss about your ADD and ADHD and see if maybe we can help each other. And with that being said, that's going to be it from me right now, folks. Good night. I probably won't be going to sleep for at least another hour, so I'm pretty well wired up. But good night, y'all. And like I said, if anybody out there wants to talk uh, to me about their ADHD or their ADD, I am more than happy to talk about it. So feel free to message me. Good night, y'all.